Right. Woohoo! People are signing in. Hello, everyone. You're coming in. It's Kyran down at the space. So really super excited today and very, very, very thankful to all of you and to all of the co-hosts and to Cynthia and Jennifer. And I cannot tell you just how amazing my heart feels being part of the process, you know? And also like excited about like stirring things up and like, let's talk about things today and let's play a little bit today. So before we get started though, I'd like to turn it over to Cynthia to do what she always does, which is so needed and beautiful and welcome. So Cynthia.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again. And as always, we're going to start with a land acknowledgement. Raise the Bar Consulting and the facilitators of the Courageous Conversations series respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of this land that we live and work on. We recognize the continuing connection of Indigenous peoples to their country, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
Right on, right on. Can we get like a little click on that there? Cool. All right. So today I'm going to offer something that is a little bit different in a couple of ways. And I would demonstrate that first by acknowledging what Cynthia just said. Like I know in many of the sessions, folks talked about, hey, do you have examples on increasing your knowledge and your diverse experiences and elements like that? And I just feel, for me personally, because again, we're all experts in our own experience, and I wanted to offer to you all an environment of being really safe in this environment. So we have various tools to do that. One is we have the mute button, we have the video button, so you don't have to be seen. Just to let everyone know that we are recording this. At the end of the official recording, there will be what we've been calling the after party, which we will turn off that recording button and we get a little bit crazy. So if you want to hold on to some things because you don't want to be recorded, that's an opportunity for you to do that as well. As you can see behind me, there's some music instruments and things. So in a moment, we'll touch on that. So I just really, again, want to offer this space or would have courageous conversations where we can like really share from our heart what we're feeling, what we're thinking, ideas, confusion, unknowing, all of those things can happen in a safe space. And we offer that for you all here. So another click on that there today. So in regards to where we're sitting, whether you're in Phoenix or whether you're in the Southwest, to increase my own diversity knowledge, I have sought out and worked with both the Pueblo tribes and the reservation tribes, international tribes. It's just been part of my connection. And so because of the creative conversation and some requests from the last few things, I sought out and received this recording, which I'd like to play for you right now as like an introduction to today's session on how to ignite that front line and create champions for you. This is Hezron Clark, and there's a group here tonight, Sunshine, some of you all know, and this is their gear behind us there. They practice for the Tribal Nations Music Tour, which is one of the projects I'm involved with. And what they decided to do, they're an up and coming band. They played at NAMM, they're gonna be on PBS representing, Anastasia was selected by PBS to represent Arizona in a series called Celebration of Music. And so they're on their way up. And when they were playing out at headlining at Venice Beach, they said, can we offer our music? Can we leave a week before and snake around reservations and places where that they never receive music, play in Venice Beach on 4th of July, and then snake around back to remote Navajo reservations, Hopi reservations, and again, bring a 4-hour set of music to those places and back. And they did that. And that's called then that became what's now the Traveling Music Tour. That simple act of reaching out to share their thoughts through music and their ideas, their culture through music, has really elevated this connection, not only between reservations, but also international folks. So Hezron Clark actually wrote this song through that experience and asked to come to the United States. And he has like 4 #1 reggae hits to play with Tonight Sunshine. It's a beautiful song, and I'd like to play it for you right now.
Ja, det kodon I kasen. Edi sen kodon. Nina tani zahol jish, nina bain zahol jish. Ekon ha na zigon khanda spani got kita havas bi. Ba yani sen khay ay sidin hasan zildini sen ligi bet khay andi ke hoyt ekon koni hono koni zat hono kon ha chindoni to ande hono eben nach ekon eben zile yikha ako bonjour to yat na so neche enitsen ako eben na konsendelia kono da hinoltsi kono shkosen ba yanitsen ya I found my nightmare on pumpkin hills. Bloody river running in my dreams. Yeah. 10,000 soldiers aiming at me. 10,000 bullets lost in the hills. Yeah. Old mountain, I know you can see, but I really wish that you were able to speak to me. Old mountain, I guess you already know now, but I heard no surrender was the warrior's call. Freedom fighter on the run. Old mountain, I know you can't see, but I really wish that you were able to speak to me. I know you've seen it all. Old mountain, I guess you already know now. But I heard no surrender was the warrior's call. No surrender, no retreat. No surrender, no retreat. If we're going down, it's on our feet. We're always at peace with what we're about to meet. It's a good day, every day a good day. Today another good day. I heard the old one say, Masana and Shiche telling us there is a better way. They veterans of these ways, the peaks and these creeks. So Ozan, what us plant the fields of prayers for the fight for peace. Warriors of the people connected to the pain of the history that hurts us. To learn and teach it hurts us. So we fight and reach to get to a place of peace. War chiefs.
right, y'all. You're right. Thank you so much for listening to that. Just take a breath for a second. So that was Gabe Yavea, Navajo leader, and Hezron Clark, and then one of Gabe's tribal leaders as well too. So we're playing it for several reasons. Today we're going to be talking about creating that sacred circle for your front line, having those champions. But from Kyron to everyone here, I mean, this is real. This is like, we all know it. We all know it. And, there are people that are really going through cultural shifts, dramatic, exciting cultural shift. They can see things on the horizon that maybe they haven't seen before. And there are other people that are, dealing with fear and other, ancient energy and whatnot. And I have never spent spent so much time in the last 3 weeks trying to facilitate calmness between these voices, in the conversations and whatnot. So today I'd like to offer just my perspective on a few things, but also a chance for us to actually talk on this in this conversation as well. One of the reasons why I bring the music, I feel that as businesses, we often just always keep things in two forms of communication: writing or speaking, right? That's our typical business format constantly. But we are not in a typical environment. This is not about creating a new business plan for something, although we are offering for you to actually put a line item in your business plan around courageous conversations. But this is about culture change. It's about some really deep stuff that's happening right now. And so we're offering the opportunity to shake things up in the way we do things. How do we look at it? How do we examine ourselves? I received an email and the communications from a local foundation, and just applause. And they're doing exactly this. They went right to the top and like, let's just crack it open. Let's have a conversation. Let's really examine every area, from hiring to training to how we evaluate grants and how we talk to people, like every single area. So it's so important. So I applaud you all on that. But I bring the music because to jump out of only the two forms, right? Normally we have writing and speaking. So now we have the music. So what was the message that you heard in the song? And here today, we'd like you all, if you want, you can write questions or responses, but also you can unmute yourself. You have the ability to unmute yourself. And there's quite a few of you on here to actually, jump in and speak. So just what came to play for you in your mind when you heard the song? Is everyone unmuted?
No.
Or let's see, Joanna, if you don't mind, can you test are you able to unmute yourself? Or
Okay, people are getting unmuted now.
everyone, Amy, are you unmuted?
I am.
Cool. All right, let's try this. I just did like a little switch. This is really cool. All right, so I'd like everyone to unmute yourself, which you typically never do in a huge Zoom call, right? I want everyone to unmute yourselves. All right. Now, just to test it, everyone just clap. Okay. I think what happens is that the mics like cut people out because it's too much, But one of the things that I wanted to offer today is, like, again, different forms of doing this. So you can mute yourself and then unmute yourself when you'd like to say something or say, hey, Kyron. So just rules of engagement for today, because we wanted this to be a courageous, interactive conversation. Again, you can still text or send emails, if you want to be more private. or you can put it in the chat room, or you can simply unmute yourself. So there is a raise your hand button as well too. I do believe it's in,
Yeah, if you scroll the bottom of your screen, if it's completely open, there's like a little hand or something.
Yeah,
It says raise.
Raise your hand. You could use that too, or you could just put your hand up, and hopefully we'll see it. But there's 2 pages of people. But so all right. So going to back to the rules of engagement. If you would like to interrupt someone because they're speaking and they said one idea and they've transferred to the next idea and they're about to transfer, and you're like, wait a minute, I want to respond to what you do, So it's perfectly fine to say, hey, Kyron, can you check in with me after you're done with this last thought? And then I'll be like, oh, okay, cool, and then I will do that, right? So that's one rule. Another one is just, type in your question, and then if you like, and then we can call on you as well too. You can say, hey, can you call on me for this question? That's another way too.
So, hey, speaking about that.
Good.
Somebody asked if you could type the name of the band in the chat. So sometime before we wrap up, if you could do that, Kyran, that'd be awesome.
Got you. So the name of the band that created the Travel Nations Music Tour, I will put that in there, and also information about them. And by the way, they'll be on. We're doing a test run, a little plug for them because they work really hard. They've done over 200 events here in Tucson supporting nonprofit organizations. So they've done, a lot of stuff. But they'll be doing a free outdoor concert at the Foothills Mall. We're testing out a bubble box system where you could bring your camp chairs, and you'll be in a small boxed area and they'll all be 10 feet apart, kind of like a restaurant, but outside. And then you also can drive up and park behind the bubble boxes, and we'll have a broadcast system. Then it becomes like a drive-in. So that's at 7:30, Foothills Mall. Can't miss it. Cool. So, all right. So, go ahead.
What day?
Saturday. Thank you. See, I love this. Where everybody's can.
Tucson or Phoenix?
Oh, drive on down to Tucson. It's in Tucson at the Foothills Mall. Foothills Mall, Tucson, 7:30, free, tonight sunshine and guests. So, okay, cool. So, all right. So, again, back to the 3 layers, right? So, one of the things we want to offer is how you can bring different layers of communicating into this important dialogue. So, we might be doing some role plays today. At the wild party time later on, I may pick up a guitar. I've written a song to share my thoughts on something. So cool. So let me jump into my PowerPoint that I brought, and I'm going to go through it. I'm going to go through the basic PowerPoint, and then go back and then start to break down the 3 areas, and then really leave time for a communication to happen with, between people. And again, you guys heard me, I mentioned the word role play. So if I might ask for volunteers, and if no one volunteers, that's fine, because I will take on multiple characters, and I might have to stand up or go on, but I will do that as well too. So we'll create the sacred circle, you guys. So much of this I give credit to my mentors throughout the years, and my close friends who do amazing work in the community: Tom Martin, Dr. David Washington, Julie Adams in New Mexico, Angelina in Los Angeles, works in Belize in South America, just to mention a few. Ricky and all them in New Mexico as well. So I always like to give credit. So I've been blessed with being part of amazing projects and programs where I was either a consultant or a facilitator or part of these nonprofit high impact programs in the Southwest. So thank you to them. So I'm right now the founder of Immerse Alliance. which is really taking off. A lot of people, because they've seen and know of my work, have come together in the last 2 years and say, let's align ourselves to our different projects all around bringing the arts to create cultural impact. And so we're doing that. And so it's the Foothills Mall and the Bourne family, thank you so much. They're in full support of helping this important idea get off the ground here in Tucson. Also want to thank Creative Machines, you know them as well too. So it's always important, I believe, to thank some folks. A little bit about me. I know you see my titles there, but one thing I've learned in working for 25 years with my tribal partners is that we as Americans often never really know in depth who we are originally meeting with, right? And so I'm not going to spend an hour and a half right now, but I've been in meetings. I was asked last year to represent the arts and music at a national gathering of council leaders around wellness and growth, in the tribal nations. And it was like an hour and 45 minutes just to do introductions. And so that's just their culture, to know who you're with in the room. And so more than just, I'm Kyran Bellinger, CEO of Immersion Alliance, that might look like, this is part of what I'm offering today. That introduction might look like, I'm Kyran Bellinger, my father is George Bellinger, my mom is Jutta Folk Lockvig, my mother's Danish, she immigrated here illegally, from Denmark in a freighter into New York, and has always been in the arts, and now has a PhD working with Alzheimer's and dementia. And my father has been an incredible artist, just passed away recently, but his lineage goes back to art and sports, all the way back to the Tumultly Plantation in southern South Carolina. And that's who I am. So that's just an offer of like what an introduction, even a mini one, looks like with sacred people that have, 1,000 years of how they have created their culture. So just an idea there. Not always does it need to be an hour-long meeting. Can we go to the next page? Very cool. So it's three basic things. I've gotten several emails. Some people have requested me, and I have also been helping folks. Like, how do you get people to come together and all the stuff, Kyran? So creating that safe space, first starts with safety, and if you have clear boundaries and a clear accountability, it's a safe place for really cool things to happen, right? Think about children. You got a family room that has really no danger points in it, and a gymnastic pad and all these playthings and all this stuff, right? The kids are safe to run around. Same thing with the backyard, right? Now take them to an open park, what do? They're uncertain about themselves. How far can they go? What can they do? So creating, we're going to examine code of conduct versus policy, creating the safe boundaries, especially with this new, well, it's not new, but in this time of cultural unrest and growth, what does that look like? What does code of conduct look like? Trust. What kind of trust do you have in your organization? And that's a very important word. It's easily broken, right? We all know that. It's very easily broken. So you as a leader, and we as people, what are we doing on a daily basis, on a prayerful, intentful basis to build and maintain trust? What are we doing? How are we listening to people? How are we speaking, asking questions? Hallway conversations. I work with Wilson Consulting, and we would go into corporations around the country, in Canada and whatnot. This is during the 90s. And we would discover why their systems are breaking down, their people systems are breaking down. And almost always, it didn't matter whether it was a tractor company or when British Airways merged with US Air to make the world's largest airline. They asked us to come in for 5 days with 50 of their top executives and examine why there's such a great turnover and all these issues and whatnot. And one of some of the common things that we, as we're flying up there and talking, I'm talking with Stephanie, and we're like, we know what to expect. We're like, okay, they're probably zinger crazy. They probably exercise hallway conversations all the time. There were just certain things that we knew were probably happening, and sure enough, it was happening. So trust. We'll examine trust and how we can really dive into building a culture that is strong with trust. And then we'll get into action. Like, it's all about action, right? So you move from zero tolerance to acceptance to champions on your front line and in your organization. Action-based champions. People that don't just show up to work, yourself included, and the board members, everything else, but they're thinking about you. They're thinking like, what can I do? How can I contribute? What sign can I paint for my organization? And be like a single person marching down Congress, diaper banks of Phoenix, diaper banks of Phoenix. Like, how can I create champions like that? So those are the three things that we're going to look at. Now, I'm going to open up with anyone else based on what you've learned so far today. Would anyone else would like to discuss anything on top of those things? Joanna, can you go ahead and ask that question? Just unmute yourself. Do you mind?
Okay. So I've worked for a few nonprofits here in the Tucson area.
Okay.
And, sometimes I've met board members who just wanted to be on the board because it looked good on their resume.
Okay.
But this concept, and I love this idea of, trust and acceptance and really having your board be an influencer in your nonprofit. But I'm a bit jaded because I've seen the opposite, and it gets very frustrating. And, are there really good boards that are doing something that we can clone? Because you get, when you've seen it before where you go, really, you're not going to help us out at all, and you hear, oh, I'm a volunteer, I'm busy, I can't really help you guys.
Yes. Awesome.
And it really makes you feel like, we're doing such good work. You guys need to really be involved in this. I know this is not what you do every day, but you did decide to volunteer and be on the board.
Can we get for her to ask that question, be part of it? Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing not only the question, but your feelings with the question. I think that is so important for us to just dig, give everything when asking an important question, so that we know that there's not other underlining questions there. So it really, I felt like that was your core question, some examples of really good boards that are champions in the organization, that know how to influence and empower, the members, the volunteers, the front line. And did I hear your question correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it gets, like I said, and I'm only talking about my personal experience. I'm sure that there are people on this who have said, oh yeah, we have a great board. And I've heard people say that. So I know that they're out there. But when you're jaded and you've been with a couple of boards that are just like, I'm a volunteer, I'll get to it when I can. You go, wait a minute.
We're going to cover some of that, when we get to the action piece. And I know that Cynthia, which module touched on the board? I don't have it.
That was Shannon's.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Shannon is a great resource. I mean, he touched on that. But to answer your question, directly, yes, they're out there. And even the people, and I don't know, I'll speak for myself. I've had some really good boards. I've been on some unbelievable boards. And I've also been on boards where people, like you said, they're there, they quit and they stay, quit and stay, So yes, there's ways to recruit and inspire the board. And the people who have those boards currently, I'm going to say this, I'm going to choose to believe that even they want to hear the answer to that question, because most of us here have been around a while, and we know that you might have a good board today. It doesn't mean that you can have a good board in 2 years. So it's like, let's figure this out together. So great question.
Aaron, can I add to that just a little bit?
Yes.
So, John, I think sometimes we have to realize that people come to boards because they want to make a difference, and sometimes they just don't know how to make a difference or what their role is, and thinking that, you know, once they get on the board that they've made it. But again, I kind of covered this before, is when people get to the board, that is just the starting point of the work. So, you know, it all depends on, you know, whether you've got, you know, different job descriptions for your board members, and you know, make sure you try to engage them. And if it's something that you don't feel that you as a leader can do, it's okay to employ a third party or an outside organization to come and help you move your board forward and to kind of shift that culture. So my short answer is, well, sometimes it's not that they don't want to, sometimes it's they don't know how to. And we have to help them understand what our expectation is and what the desired outcome is for our board.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and there are great resources that are like the Community Foundation and others. They also, you know, and raise the bar. There's folks out there and organizations that will support that. So let me go to the next page, and we're just going to dive right in. And I love this. Love this. All right. So zero tolerance. So what does that look like? Like, we talk about creating that boundary, like really, really super clear boundary, you know, in your organization. So number one, like, there's a difference between policy and code of conduct. And I was looking at different resources and different examples, and, you know, and so I want to try to jump into that. Like, what does that mean? Like a code of conduct for this conversation around race and justice and historical you know, issues around racism and all these really dynamic, heavy issues right now, right? Or any issue that generates the kind of emotion and fear and anger and violence that we have, right? So what is your code of conduct around these issues? What kind of policy do you have? I know about 10 years ago, like, nonprofits and everyone started to examine bullying, right? Bullying in schools, cyberbullying. What does that mean to have like a policy against bullying? What does that look like, right? So I wanted to throw it out there, just give moments for people to think a little bit about this. But let me ask you first, how often do you examine your structural walls, I call it? Like, it's the exterior of your family home, your code of conduct and your policy. It's what's keep people safe. It also holds them accountable, and it needs to be clear, right? So what does it look like in your code of conduct? Let me give you this example. All right, I'm gonna do a little self role play right here. Okay, so I am a 22-year-old camp counselor, right? And I have a 14-year-old teen in one of the programs, right? And Isaiah, do you mind just joining me real quick? I know you got a mouthful. I'm recruiting Isaiah just for, and all he has to do is go, So you can eat your lunch too. Give Isaiah. All right.
Hello, everyone.
All right, and he's actually one of the members of the the founder of the Tribal Nation Music Tour in Italian Sunshine. Okay. So and this is regarding your policies and code of conduct, okay? And you can, translate this to the kinds of stuff that you do in your organization. So I sit down. What's up, Isaiah? What's wrong, man? You look frustrated. Yeah.
There's this girl I really want to date.
There's a girl you want to really date. All right,
Yeah,
all
we're
right.
going with that one.
Yeah.
With that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's this girl that I really want to date. And
Okay.
she has a really big butt.
A really big bottom?
Bottom. Yes.
Okay. Wow, okay. And what's the problem?
How do I date her?
Oh, well, first of all, me, I like girls with really big bottoms. So I'm feeling what you're talking about right now, man. I'm with you, man. All right, time out. Okay, so was that appropriate what I just did? Anyone? Obviously not, right? Obviously not. But did I say something wrong? Like if you have in your policy, no cursing, no this, no that, right? But then in your code of conduct, that's a behavioral thing, right? That's a behavioral thing. And that has to do with training. So how do you address in your code of conduct some of the issues that you might approach in this environment right now? So let me go back to what good might look like so you're all not freaked out. Okay.
I think we're all in shock.
You're all in shock? Okay. And wait. So are you thinking that this kind of conversation doesn't happen with
No, we know it happens. We just didn't know it was going to happen on this video.
All right.
How do I interrupt again? How do I?
You just
I have to interrupt.
All right. All right. So we're gonna start again from the beginning. Hey Isaiah, what's going on, man?
Hey, Kyran.
So I noticed that you've been sort of alone, and I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Is everything okay?
Yeah, there's just this girl I really like. She has a really big bottom.
Okay. All right.
And I don't, how do I date her?
Oh, well, first of all, I remember being 14, when I first started to date and stuff, and it could be, challenging and exciting and that kind of thing. Okay, so you see where I'm going, right? I acknowledge that I heard him, but I didn't go down the rabbit hole right with him. Obviously, right? You guys have all been this. So the question goes back to, what do you have in your code of conduct? All right, so now I'm going to do another role play. That is, he's an executive, or he's a senior staff person, and I'm an executive director. All right? Okay? Everyone if you don't all mind, just take Isaiah and I are taking a risk here, okay? Isaiah, how are you doing? Wait, don't answer the question. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm short on time. So I noticed that the last 5 projects that I gave you, you've turned them in a little bit late, Yeah,
with emails ahead of time.
I know. But so, is there anything I can do to help you become more time efficient or be able to up your work ethic game?
No, I don't. I'm not seeking any feedback about it, but I'm open to it if you have some.
Well, I know that you're Mexican, right? And you have,
Right.
and I met your uncle, this sweet man, and he's worked hard all of his life. And it's part of your culture. So one of my advice is maybe meet with him and ask about work ethic. You know what I mean? And just see if you can tap in to some of that culture that you have. I think it would be more efficient.
What kind of culture is it?
Your Mexican culture. Time out. Okay. Let me Isaiah. So, how is that? Would anyone like to chime
It
in?
was awful.
Awful.
Yes, very painful, traumatizing. Yeah.
Painful, traumatizing. A lot of stuff, right? A lot of stuff. Let me ask you a question, and this is not necessarily be answered, but you can if you want to. How would you write, was that something that you would accept in your organization? Is that equal to, worse than stealing from your organization? You know what I mean? So like where does that sit in your game plan, in your code of conduct around these kinds of conversations? And how do your people understand what their boundaries are to not be in, to not have that behavior in your organization? And how do we train? How do you introduce this method into this conversation with the organization? Role playing is an essential part of it, right? So I'm gonna ask Isaiah now. This is Isaiah, he's not the executive, I'm asking him. So how did you feel role playing that?
Like I was back in the conversations that I've had like that, where people just assume like, they generalize about your culture and then they put these stereotypes, they project them onto you, and it's frustrating and it really hurts. Yeah, and like in the frustration, it was like, okay, now I'm in again the situation where I'm experiencing bad leadership, and it's like I have all this time invested, and now like it compounds from there. You know?
And even though that you knew you were in a role play.
Yeah, I can feel the tensions right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luckily, I've had a lot of practice with it.
Okay. Now, what was my intention? What did I say my intention was in that conversation? To help him get better, right? And so that was a little extreme, but is that, I've had those conversations. I have them in a joking way with people because they think I can dance, or they think I do this, or they think I do that. So as a leader, in your intentions, how, could something, all right, as an example, back to the role play, I want to see how such a slippery slope it is, Hey, Isaiah, how you doing, brother?
Doing pretty good today.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you on those last 5 projects, okay?
Yeah.
They were a little late, I know you sent the emails and everything. I talked to your uncle about this, who referred you, was on the board, Yeah. And I suggest maybe is there a way we can get together and really talk about how we can help you increase your work ethic, just be a really good worker.
Okay.
Really be able to have good time management and just stay in the game until the job gets done.
Yeah, which is what I did with those 5 projects.
Okay, I'm just here to help. I really want
to.
Yeah, because if you have 5 projects that are late, and then you have another 2 or 3 that are late, it's there's a pattern. You want to have a reputation like your uncle of just getting the job done, working hard.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So time out. Not so blatant, right? But was that almost worse?
Yeah, it's still weird.
Okay. Thank you, Isaiah.
You're welcome.
We'll be,
Okay. You're welcome.
Well, you could stay. Okay. He's got to eat.
Thank you, everyone.
They're practicing tonight. So, all right. So again, what I want to point out is it's fully unacceptable and fireable. It's a termination offense for the use of certain languages, certain behaviors, bullying, elements like that. But you really examining your code of conduct, what does it look like to be, even in the slightest way, bring in those racial conversations, those, you know, conversations where you're bringing in someone's culture, their history, or making fun of it. I mean, comedy is like the biggest use of bullying, right? That's the biggest use of bullying. So in your code of conduct, how do you address this courageous conversation? Because it needs to be clear. And often behaviors, like, did I say in the first scenario, did I use a curse word? No. I said his uncle. I said work ethic. I said I want to help you. I said the word Mexican. Is Mexican a bad word? No, it's a beautiful word. But if you add all those up together in the behavior that I did with Isaiah, that's unacceptable as a leader or anyone in the organization. So how does your code of conduct reflect that? And that goes for staff, board, volunteers, and even your community partners. So I don't know.
We have someone who raised their hand.
Okay, yeah, please jump.
Tabitha.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say that I appreciate the thoughts about thinking of how this fits into your code of conduct. So I'm the CFO where I work, and it's very clear. If you steal, it's termination. It's black and white. It's very clear. It does not say that if you are racist or bullying or homophobic that you are immediately terminated. You know, so you posed a good question earlier about, like, what does your code of conduct say? And of course we have anti-bullying, anti-retaliation. We have all those policies in place, but I don't know that it speaks as clear and direct to those types of behaviors the same way it does with financial loss versus, like, you know, humiliating, belittling, disrespecting somebody. So I think that those are really great things to think about, and how are we really supporting our staff in the ways that we should be when we're supporting our agency, and financial losses, but not emotional losses. So I think that that's a huge takeaway, and it's really making my head, you know, run through some things.
Go ahead, Shannon.
You know, I think that when you talk about how there's a blatant zero tolerance, you know, if you steal, you're terminated or whatnot, I think a lot of what I just saw is something that typically should be addressed through a zero tolerance conduct policy at the HR level. If you don't address it there, it doesn't make it excusable, because then you have other protections like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that protects against these things. I do think that, you know, while some of these conversations that we've just seen may very well happen, but, you know, me as a former HR practitioner, I don't find anything appropriate about those conversations. And I think that, again, once, you know, if it's addressed in the form of your policy, that's your mechanism to help, you know, address that behavior and either manage the person to the expectation, or they'll manage themselves out.
And I agree. Also, I think the other piece of zero tolerance is that the organization or the leader exercises accountability across the board. So if it isn't okay to have certain kinds of conversations, then it's not okay for anybody to have those. Not that some people can have some version of those conversations and not be terminated. Other people really cannot. And I think that that's where that sometimes the challenge is at the shade of gray with implementation, accountability implementation comes into play. So even if most places don't really have very super strong policies and codes of conduct. If you have that, that's great. From my experience, many organizations don't have both. And then where they do, to someone else's point, I think it was Tabitha's, very much about things that are seen to be legal or illegal, but not about a code of conduct of other kinds of behavior and the consequences. But then even with when you have those, if those consequences are not clearly executed across the board, you're not going to create any sort of environment of trust and safe space, because people will know that some people are allowed to get away from with certain things in the organization because they know someone, because people think that they have money, because their father is this person, because they raise X amount of dollars for the organization, whatever those things are that make the rubber meet the road with the implementation. So I just wanted to put that out there too, Kayla.
You know, I'm applauding everyone on this here. This is huge, right? This is huge, because it's one of the main reasons why there is so much civil unrest right now, is because people are recognizing that perhaps certain systems need to be examined, like on a large scale, on their policies and code of conduct, right? So, and from our culture on down to the smallest pieces. So, I'll just give some personal experiences. People ask me that all the time because they know Kyron usually says what he's going to say, and I usually do what I want to do. But because of that, I don't always get funded. I'll be honest with you. I don't always receive the funds I need to receive. And so in New Mexico, a clear example, you know, one of the New Mexico Santa Fe council members would take me out to drink 3 or 4 times, and every single time he said, "I will fund you if you label your Chicano, Mexican, and Native American kids as at risk in your program, so that the data on the back end, you know, will look good, and not include all those white kids you have in there." And I was like, "No, I won't do it." You know, most of those white kids have more serious drug problems and they're in my program than the Hispanic kids. Matter of fact, a lot of my brown kids are the ones counseling and therapy, you know. So I would walk out. I literally would walk out. And here in Tucson, I had a potential board member talking about Tribal Native Music Tour, and he said, quote unquote, "That's good, because they need something because they're very lazy, and that's why they have diabetes." And we were at a restaurant with other people, and I stopped and I said, excuse us, can I talk to you outside? And so I went outside and I'm like, "Brother, I've known you a long time." I said, number one, from me to you, please never say that out loud. Like, I have zero tolerance for that. I can't control what you think. I can't control what you believe. But in my presence, I will never accept you saying that or anything like that. And he was like, "What, are you kidding? I really like what you're doing and everything else, blah, blah, blah." I go, "Bro, everything that we do as leaders matters. That is something that you do not do. If you want to pull me aside and say, I have a personal feeling about something, I will be the person you know that will listen to you. I will listen." This last week, I listened to some stuff, chills all over my body. I just want to jump out of my chair. But you know, I tried to be a person that will listen if someone asks for that space, that sacred space. But sometimes you gotta just step up, realize that this is my role, and just do it. But I give myself permission to do that. I understand if you're in an organization, that may be part of your conversation with your senior team and everyone. "Hey guys, what does it look like if one of us is here? Because I heard Kyron say this is what he did. Would you guys be okay if I did that? Like, can we talk about that, you know? Like talk about it with your close circle, these scenarios. Because it may be okay for you, and I think it is okay for you, to not have to like interrupt the meeting at a restaurant and walk outside with someone. Maybe for you, it's like, take note, send a text, "Hey, can we meet the next day?" Get some support, right? Pre-talk about that, and then meet with that potential board member and have that conversation. But these are real things. Like, it's zero tolerance for these issues. The human machine, like, what's more important in any of your organizations? What's the most expensive piece of equipment in almost any organization? Anyone?
People. We know that. That was sort of, I apologize. I didn't mean to. I was kind of like a high school teacher moment, wasn't it? It was like I'm looking at the camera.
My apologies. I get kind of amped up over this. But it is people. It is people. And yet our policies and code of conducts are filled with material things, stealing, all this, show up to work on, whatever. So yeah, so what we do to protect our people is really, really super important. Super, super important. Cool. I'm excited. Does anyone want to jump in before I go to the next slide?
I do.
Yes.
Hi. I would like to kind of piggyback off of what Tabitha and I think it was Shannon had talked about. When I think about how to create a zero tolerance policy in our code of conduct and language that really makes clear what that is, I am totally at a loss, because I think so many of the conversations, even, one of the scenarios that you painfully demonstrated with, is it Isaiah?
Isaiah, yeah.
Some of that language that you used is, I think about Brian's slide the other day, and that people can walk away with two different versions of what happened. And while many of us see blatant racism happening, there is a world in which a person could walk away from that not having any clue that what they just did was terrible. And I think that that's part of the work that we're trying to do. And so I have no idea what language to use to put into a policy that makes that clear for people that don't understand what they have done is really offensive. And many of the conversations that you demonstrated will be happening with two people behind closed doors. There's no other witnesses that are present to say, dude.
It's true. It is absolutely true. It has taken us, is it Sada or Sarah?
It's Sarah.
Sarah. It has taken us some time, a couple of decades, and we still haven't gotten it right yet in regards to sexual abuse and whatnot in the workplace, right? So if someone is like, whoo, in a board meeting, man, your hair looks good. I like the way your hair is, yeah. Right? Or, oh, I like your new hairdo. That's a nice cut. Almost the same languaging, right? So, and then that follows up with a touch on the shoulder when there's a group, and then the, executive director, we do this all the time. We walk around and we touch someone on their shoulder as we're making a point, right? Is that in the policy? You touching someone on the shoulder when you're making a point? Is that something that is acceptable right now? Is that okay? I don't know. Maybe it's okay. Are we saying we don't touch each other? No. Isaiah and I hug each other right now. We love each other, right? So it's a challenge, Sarah. This is why it's called courageous conversations, because we're entering into a lot of new territory, and we're going to need to answer these questions by reaching out to each other and continuing the conversation. Brian would say it is a race that has no finish line, right? But it's something that we continue. It's like parenting, I call it. It's like you never stop being a parent. Like you're always a parent. So code of conduct, I've been involved with HR, and maybe Shannon, you can speak to this too. I've been involved with HR where we've had to let people go through code of conduct. And usually you must have a series of things, a series of small things, right? But this is new territory. What does that language look like? And each organization might be a little bit different, and so it's a very, very good question.
Hey, Kyra, it's Milton.
Yeah.
I'd like to address Sarah's issue by example. I work for a defense contractor, and part of the annual training requirement is online, and it covers in-depth code of conduct and what is expected in video form, and there's a policy manual. Now, I don't think you necessarily have to read the policy manual to get the gist of what the video training is trying to point you towards as far as a behavior that's acceptable in the organization. So that that's an annual requirement that may be pushed down by the government, but why couldn't that annual requirement be pushed to every participant, every significant person in an organization like a not-for-profit? Yeah. And that way the training gets accomplished almost without any human intervention. But the point is that it's not a one-time requirement. It is a continual training requirement. So you don't have an opportunity to get it. You get reintroduced to it each and every year. So that's what I would suggest. It's very effective in that organization, and there are people all around the world that are part of this organization, but we all understand what is acceptable behavior and what is not.
Milton, that's a great point. You know, I was a manager with Carmex, the car company, and they required that, I think it was once every 6 months.
Exactly. I mean, if it was normal.
Can everyone like remute and unmute when you're asking a question? Okay, cool. So that is and that's pretty standard actually in several big box companies, but not so much in the nonprofit world. But what comes with it and what makes it effective is video role plays. Video role plays is in the companies that I know. When I worked for Wilson Consulting, role playing was an essential part of this kind of a thing, especially for management, because it showed the different kinds of techniques and tones of your voices and when you do things and all. So yeah. So we're just touching on this. Like literally each one of these, I have 2 more to go. Literally we would spend 8 hours when I was with Wilson Consulting and doing this, or Pecos River Learning Center, for each one of these. It'll use like a 3 or 5 day thing. So I'm gonna try to jam it on in and leave time for questions. So thumbs up to go to the next slide. Cool. So, all right, so acceptance. We have clear boundaries, as clear as they can be. That's rotating, figuring out the code of conduct, all of that. And then we're moving into the acceptance, like where everyone is like on the same page around the kind of culture free of these issues, the kind of culture that's an idea culture, so accepting that. And not just not doing it, but also then believing and accepting it. So how do we create that culture that where this can happen? Because often the emotion machine, often if you're talking about changing an individual's mind, you're actually asking them to examine and change their culture. So in some regards, their DNA, their belief system. So how do we do that? Right? Why are people on different sides? Like what is going on? So this last week, I was engaged with people and there was the division was so great between folks. There was like a wall 10, Jennifer has the wall of China, I think, behind her on screen, right? Like that thick, like there was nothing you could say, no videos or anything. It was like, bam, right? And so before we get to the facilitate, demonstrate, and celebrate, I wanted to offer this little quick model that I just want to draw up on my whiteboard here because it's something when people say, Kyron, how are you able to facilitate or sometimes stay calm? You're doing these big events, all this stuff. How do you stay calm? And sometimes people are freaking out and whatnot. It's because I was trained in this model. And actually this model was also used by I was a volunteer firefighter in the Pecos Wilderness when I worked for Pecos River Learning Center. And they also train this too so that you can stay calm in an emergency. So I would go up onto a vicious car accident, be the first one there, and 3 vehicles are disintegrated, right? You gotta stay calm in those moments, right? So I wanted to spend like 10 minutes just giving you this model, but I'm giving you a little asterisk that this is normally something that is a 4-hour training for. But I just think it's so valuable. And you all are just such amazing, high-performing people, culturally understanding everything else. So very, very cool. So, all right, I have my little trusty whiteboard here. So we used to use a snake as an example. Have you ever said to yourself, you get to work and you're really upset because you're late. There was traffic, right? And you're late to your board meeting and someone says, why are you upset? And what do you say? There was traffic and now I'm late to my board meeting. That's why I'm upset, right? Or have you ever, I don't know how, none of you have ever worked with or have young kids, so this may not apply to you, but have you ever, someone asks you, like, why are you so upset? And you're like, oh, my kids did this and this and this, and that's why I'm so upset, right? So this has to do with our ability to be able to communicate with each other. So we used to imagine this, 500 people in a conference room, and we have 3 people come up to the stage. Now at lunchtime or whatever, I would recruit these people based on their real life, right? So person one grew up in New York in condominiums, high rise. If there was a fly inside the house, they would call an exterminator, right? One time when they were a kid, they saw a video and they were like 3, they accidentally like walked in and it was like the Ice-T movie called Anaconda or whatever, right? They walked in and their parents were watching that movie and a huge snake like, killed Ice-T, right? And they were like, oh my God, or Ice Cube, it was Ice Cube? It was Ice Cube, Isaiah's correcting me, right? And so now they're in a high rise, no bugs, no animals, right? And their early childhood experience is a snake on a movie screen, right? And then they go to college and one of their friends, let's go on a hike, and one of their friends gets bit by a rattlesnake, right? Boom, right? And so that's person 1, absolute cultural belief, fear. Person 2 is me. I grew up in East LA, moved around, was poor, but we had like little hills and there was lizards and, and various things. And I had an amazing youth leader who was like, hey, I want to take you boys out. I was part of like the Boys and Girls Club boxing thing. And he went out and we ran over a snake going to a campground site in the Joshua Tree. And he showed us how to cook it. I was kind of staying away. He was showing us about all this stuff, right? So I know when I moved out to Tucson, I was like, ooh, Tucson, got the snakes there, but it's okay. Scorpions are another thing. I like freak out about that, but we're not talking about scorpions, we're talking snakes. So that's me. Number 1 is Cynthia, or the third one is Cynthia, right? Cynthia, her father is a zookeeper, right? Her mother is a PhD in reptiles, right? She grew up as a child on her mother's back, like picking up snakes and squeezing out the venom, for pharmaceutical companies and all this stuff, right? So the snake is the event, right? You have 3 different people, and then we literally have these 3 people standing on, in front of the class, and then I would have one of my partners bring the zoo box, like 3 by 3 feet with a burlap sack over it. And on the box, it said snake. And I wouldn't tell these people that I was actually doing that. I would just say, hey, can you be part of volunteer? All you got to do is stand there. That's all you got to do. It's just stand there. So now I say, okay, great. I'm going to have Isaiah come up here with this, event for us here. And so he starts walking up with, towards the stage. What happens to number 3? What does number 3 do? Stands there. Says, oh, a snake's coming, that's cool. I personally like the boa constrictor from Africa or from New Zealand, whatever, right? It's like totally calm and happy, right? What does number 2 do? Chiron, right? So Cynthia's happy. Chiron is what? A little bit cautious. You know, I step back a little bit. I'm checking my safety zones, making sure I'm okay, right? What happens to number 1? Who's number 1? Milton, can you be number 1? It's okay if I use your name as number 1? As the person who grew up in the skyrock, in the towers there? Okay, so what does Milton do? Milton creates one of those cartoon holes in the wall, right? And he just, boom, through the wall, right? One event, three different reactions, right? That cultural upbringing creates these little maps in your head, right? We all know this. Your brain's there, you're a baby, you touch the stove, burnt, a little line happens, right? Touch it again, mom screams, gets darker, right? That's what happens, right? Snake, Milton saw that movie, line, then a friend got bit by, at college. Now it's super deep and dark. When he sees a snake, it is behavioral. It is like in his DNA. And does that apply in what we're seeing on TV at all? Does that apply on both sides of this conversation? Different upbringings, right? Got a little map right here. It happens so quickly, and then your emotional response right here, right? Boom. Between snake to map to here is nanoseconds, right? Then you come up to here, and then you have your reaction. Okay. And then usually your reaction creates an event for someone else. Usually the way you respond, you become the snake for someone else. And this is why we have those difficult, I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, if it's not this, there's other things. There's Isaiah, what's that book that I keep handing out? Oh, no, we know the road that's traveled, but no, the conversation book. Critical Conversation, that's what it's called. I'm gonna send a link to that. But it gets into this around corporations. But you all see that? I think you can see it. Okay. So now what do we do? So in the fire department, and when I was a first responder, what we did was, you've got to somehow, you can't help this. Once it's imprinted in your mind, nothing can change that. It's never going to go away. I'll never forget I walked into a room when I was like 5 years old, and I saw that in the 60s when we were during the Cold War, they would show us in the classroom, kids, what it looks like when an atomic blast happens. You remember that with that two-story building? It would like, a gust of wind would push it this way, and it would suck it, and then it would destroy it, right? Even saying that right now, my skin gets, if you can see it. Yeah, it just goes crazy, right? Because of that one experience. So when you have a critical conversation, having someone know that this is what's happening with them. This is like a DNA level event that's happening in our country right now. We're talking about hundreds of years of cultural upbringing and storytelling and things that have happened to people. And it's huge. And yet we think that we can just have a conversation and the other person is gonna somehow get on our side or whatever, But if we understand that it's natural to them and we're willing to be part of this give them a different experience, a little different experience. So true story I told yesterday. I was working on a boat in Alaska and I had lost 4 kids in 9 months after being on the front line in LA. I lost one to, was inducted, the gang, he wouldn't join a gang, so they held him down, shot drugs into him. He was out of his mind, and they put him on the street, and he shot and killed a mom and a child to indoctrinate him into a gang. And then Gabby, who was an Isaiah for me, was put into, was wrongly accused. I lost 4 people. I ended up on a boat crabbing in Alaska. Like literally, that's a true story. And yesterday I explained, I was sitting in my bunk, we were getting ready to leave Dutch Harbor, and my bunkmate gets on the boat, and he's got white pride tattooed all over. He's got swastikas, everything. Right? His name was Brian. And make a long story short, obviously, like we got into physical fights. The captain sat us down. We shared some stories. For me, to him, I was this line. I was someone that his grandparents, he was son of the king, in Anchorage, Alaska. He was son to the prince of the clan in Anchorage, Alaska. So this was a hardened, seasoned clan member that was on a crabbing boat with me. And we got into physical fights, and he had never in his entire life actually talked to a black person. And so after about 2 weeks, this happens, but then all of a sudden I became like this small little line over here, a little diversion off of that, right? I'm gonna put this down. I think you guys are getting it. A little diversion. And then by the end of our tour out to sea, because he was fascinating to me as well too. I'd never been that close. I'm in like close quarters, right? With someone with his upbringing. And by the end of when we were in Dutch Harbor on the plane to fly to Anchorage, Alaska, we had developed the strangest relationship because of the wisdom of the captain, whom we both trust. He was Alaskan Native and Russian, and he was the best fighter on the boat. So when Dennis and I fought, I broke his arm, I separated ribs. The captain put us both in the infirmary. And so we respected him like from that captain standpoint, but he forced us to listen to each other. And the question he asked was, talk about your favorite thing at the dinner table, right? And what he was seeking was what I called the shared pool. Like we all have, maybe there's a place where we all have the same event in our background, and we all have a similar emotional response to that event. I call it the shared pool. And that's what the captain did. He said, talk about your dinner table, right? Don't bring up race or anything else, but talk about what is a great thought for you. And he would share. I was like, oh my God. And I would share. And we're like, we're kind of the same. And fast forward, when we were walking off the airplane and through the little ramp into the airport of Anchorage, like he was like, okay, now my brothers are going to be there with my dad, so it might be a problem. I'm like, bro, I don't want to be, like, I'm not messing around with that. He's like, no, man, no, I want to introduce you. It's ridiculous how we are, blah, blah, blah. And we came around the corner. They looked at us, and it wasn't 2 seconds before 2 of his brothers lunged at me, and he lunged at them, and we were in a fist fight against his family. And so, can this change? Yes, it can change, right? But it took us to understand where our shared pool was in order for that change, that cultural DNA belief system to really begin to open up the opportunity for a new map and a new pathway. The old ones never go away, but you can start to, through experience, start to generate new ideas and new pathways, new belief systems. But I bring this up because I'm looking at the screens of things in Kenosha and other things, and I see that we need, and Robin says this. Thank you, Robin. Oh, there's a lot of chats. I'm gonna stop here in a second. I'm almost done with this. That we need to understand the depth of this and not just jump to the conclusion. It's the only way to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to be fighting again and again. It might calm down, but then we'll be back at it again. And so that's my 15-minute, 20-minute version of what normally, and what we normally do is we do examples and exercises where people experience these things and then experience doing them differently. I'm a ropes course trained facilitator. That's what ropes courses are for. They get you into a place where you are experiencing huge fear, but your mind knows that you're safe. And so it gives you an opportunity to jump through the hoop of how can you have a different reaction to that fear-based response. So, cool. I'm gonna take a breath here and open it up. Cynthia, if you can like help facilitate some of these questions that are there.
There's a lot of comments.
Okay.
I don't see specific questions.
Or comments.
Let's see.
And if anyone wants to unmute and chime in as well too, do so, please.
I mean, Robin made a point and said that we need leadership on all levels to help us see our common ground, and that it really starts there at the leadership level.
It does. It does.
What else? Yeah.
So I have the 3 elements there. So how, right? How can you manage this in your organization? Now that I shared that, how can you manage this? So I put down facilitate new events and experiences. It's one of the things, right? If you facilitate, if you're doing the same thing the same way all the time, you're not allowing opportunities. I offer the thought that you may not be allowing opportunities for new experiences, new conversations to happen. So it could be, as part of your game plan, facilitate some new events and new experiences. Change it up a bit. And just by talking about, say, hey, we're gonna do it for this, or we're gonna do it for that, just give them opportunities. Your board, at all levels, like facilitate new events and experiences. Because culture is, what is culture? It's music, food, stories, right? Those are all the elements of culture, and that drives your belief system. So providing food, music, experiences, right, let's just use logic. If we know how culture is defined and we want to help enhance or change culture, then let's manage new cultural experiences with our people.
Hey, Kyron?
Go ahead.
Can I, this is Shannon again.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to what you had to say earlier about, you talked about HR, there needs to be a series of things that happened. I wanted to go back because I wanted people to leave here understanding that there are different laws that protect and that help, give some guidance on how to address these things. And the thing that's important to know is, when you look at the EEOC or Title VII, it mimics the whole sexual harassment component. Means the more severe, the less pervasive it has to be. So if there's a significant incident, it doesn't take a multitude of infractions before you can address it, in terms of termination. It's, it follows that trend of sexual harassment. It's either severe or pervasive. The more pervasive, the more severe, the less pervasive it has to be. And just to go tie back in what Milton said, Sarah, to answer your question, there are tons of videos that help, address these kinds of things. And there are some modern ones out there. Just Google, EEOC or, HR discrimination training videos. There's some really good stuff. And it even has trainings for managers and employees that kind of differentiate the different roles and responsibilities.
Absolutely. And you can through doing some new events and new experiences, with like videos or role playing, you can do it where it does bring an element of fun, different ways of communicating that. So it's not just, here's a new policy, here's a code of conduct policy, it's in writing, and then I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to keep going back to what you're talking about, culture in your organization, right? We're talking about that sacred circle, and that involves more than just writing and talking. It involves doing and singing and food and smells. And I mean, it's a real thing where companies come in and they look at the feng shui of your organization. When people walk into your building, what are they feeling just by its setup? And so those are all real things that are easy to work on, hard to measure, hard to see if it's working, but it's easy to move things around. So, all right, so demonstrate. So I'm gonna, being real and vulnerable in the you as a leader. I cannot express to you enough just how incredibly important that is. To be yourself, to think of ways that you could safely, because you need to keep your own safety intact. But it could mean being vulnerable. Like, I don't know the answer, guys, but I, as the executive director or the director of programming, I want this. I would like this environment to feel safe and to really thrive for you guys. And in regards to these issues that are around culture and race and all these things that are happening, I don't know the answer. And here's what's happening in my life, and here's what, so being vulnerable and real is very, very important. Demonstrate. Celebrate big and small. Personal is professional. Celebrate. Most of you that I work with here in Tucson know, like, I bring the music, I bring the celebration. I have a celebration model. I cannot tell you just how important that is. Let me give you an exercise that you can do, even with your board. Okay, with your board. And Milton, all of us, Jennifer, we all can help you with something like this, right? So even if you're not comfortable, we can come in. Sometimes it's important because then you're not on the, let us take the risk. But for example, there's several studies, but there was one that Harvard put out in the early 80s where they videotaped the dining room of like 1,000 families from different backgrounds and whatnot. And they wanted to find out about positivity in the home. And they realized that out of every 10 comments made to children, only 2 were either neutral or positive. And probably, if you all were in a room, your heads would be kind of go, okay, that makes sense, right? So people are not used to receiving accolades that, unless it's official, like an official plaque, an official this, right? And so what you can do is get them in the circle. It's called positive reinforcement circle. Have them stand in a circle, set it up, and talk about that and say, look, what we want to do is create a vibration of positivity, which we all know. We see football, we accept it in our American culture. We accept so many things in sports that we would never do, that we hardly ever do, in the workplace or even in our family house or whatever. I mean, when's the last time you got your at family dinner? All right, hey guys, let's all go outside and let's all put our hands together. Who's your butt? Who? Like, I'm like, when's the last time y'all done that, right? Like, before we eat, let's rally, right? Do a haka, do all. Anyways, sorry, I'm getting carried away. But we would have everyone stand in a circle, and one at a time, all they had to do was stand in the center of the circle. That's it. One at a time, stand in the center of the circle, and everyone else who's around the outside of the circle has to say positive things about that person. Positive things. I love the way you park your car. It doesn't matter, just positive things. And they have to say a lot, and they have to say them over each other. So it's like popcorn style. Everyone's talking at the same time. And that person has to just slowly turn and make 10-second eye contact with each person. And I tell you, it's one of the hardest things for executive level people to do, to be inside that circle. I've had so many of those, that level people just break down crying and say it's one of the most powerful things that they've ever experienced. How simple is it? Everyone gets in a circle and says nice things, right? And so being personal is professional if it's managed right, if it's part of your intent, right? And that's also a form of celebration. So big and small. Small celebration is, you know, at one of the companies that I work with, I would challenge each manager to document 7 times a day saying something nice to someone. Hardest thing to do.
Hey, Kyran,
Yeah.
Milton, I would say that circle exercise
Yeah.
is exceedingly effective.
Oh,
when
yeah.
when those people standing around you are people that you don't know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. We do that. I do that with teams a lot, right? I've done that before, because the idea that, you know, because Milton, what happens is, even when people that know each other, you know what they say, Milton? They say, well, I don't really know. I'm like, what am I going to say about him? Like, I don't really know anything. Like, oh, whoa, you know, right? And I'm like, you're not getting away. Nope. You jumped on that zip line yesterday when we had everyone out there, 500-foot zip line. You had the headband on. You were like, I have courage, you know, and you jumped off the zip line. But now you're like backing out of this because you can't think of positive things to say. So you're right. And sometimes, Milton, having strangers, it's easier for people to say positive things about strangers than it is for people that they know, especially in the workplace, you know? So, and you know what's really fun is you can like co-do this with an organization. So let's say you have a small board and you don't have a lot of people. You can go to the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA or something and say, hey, can we borrow your teenagers to do this exercise? We just like to have a group of teenagers come and do positive things. So there's different ways you can do it. But I think you're understanding my point is the significant importance of managing your culture, even if you have a small organization, even if it's just 3 of you. Like you can talk, hey guys, we need to go hang out. We need to have like playtime. We need to do different things, you know? I'd like for us to take a moment and just acknowledge each other for the last 3 months. Can we just do that? I know it might feel forced or whatever, but I would like to do it. You know, so those are all really important things. So, yeah. And there are resources like as an experiential educator, it's a great resource. I think even like the university and we'll get with some of the foundations, and we'll offline about that. So reach out to us. Great. And there's a way that you can also, we used to do this in New Mexico, have several small nonprofits grouped together, you know, so that you have the larger human experience. But sometimes it's good to have at least 15, 20 people in these larger experiences, so that when you're examining that, you know, the event model, you know, the emotional response, and you're doing different exercises, you have more human interaction and stuff. So there's a way to do that. Very cool. I'd like to open it up for any just thoughts or conversations around this acceptance, this cultural piece. Where are we at time-wise? Woo! Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go to the last page, and I'll zip through this. I'm like 5 minutes over. I apologize. I usually run over a little bit, but I just get excited. So the action piece is you've established the code of conduct, the boundaries, the accountability. You've created a safe place for people to be truthful and, you know, present. And then you've managed the culture, right? You know, everyone accepts, and you're growing the culture. You're doing that. Now it's like, what do you do to have the needle move forward? How do you empower people, right? Really, the simplest thing I could say for right now, because of time, is create a calendar. Like it's part of our culture. We understand that the football season will normally, outside of the COVID years, you know, school starts here, that does there, you know, and people can plug in and they know what's coming. When they know that the heroes event for families in your organization is coming. They know it's coming. So and 2 things happen there. One, it allows for a safe involvement in all these things that you're doing by putting it on the calendar, keeping it clear, having a consistent, series of things, including your annual code of conduct training, which is followed by a chili cook-off, which joins the fire department's car show with a booth, goes to the Arizona Bowl and carries a flag. And you have all these sequence of things that builds your culture, right? Create that season. Create a championship season. If you acknowledge, a form of celebration is acknowledgement, just simple acknowledgement. And one of the clearest ways to acknowledge people is film. Like, do you have on a hallway, something like that, where you've got a collage of your people and your board and, doing things, right? Do you have a birthday calendar? I know it seems like elementary, but it is important. Acknowledgement, part of your system, and then have a season that they all know is coming so they can participate in it, okay? That is like a really, really super important thing to do. It creates that safety, and it creates the ability for people to really activate themselves. So to put a closure on it, if you go to the last for this model, and then we'll dip into more questions and things. Courageous culture is managed through compassionate, leadership. So I hope my model, talking about the snakes, helps you be able to compassionate as a leader a lot more effective. And so it's a new word I've been using for like 2 months now. I love it. So the action of compassion. So I was like, oh, compassionate. But really, it's like how you can put this into your plan, your way of thinking. What are the things that I'm going to do, right? The other piece is that we're not going to dive into right now, but that's definitely going to be some future things. How then, once you have that culture, does your organization, with all those frontline champions and everyone, tie into the bigger picture of your community, tie into the bigger picture of the nation, and tie into this global change that's happening? But to do that, your home is your home, right? As a leader, as a parent, your home is where that development and that foundation is built in order for you to really, you're already doing amazing things with what you do in the community, right? Your products and what you offer, everything else. But we're talking about something that is a little bit deeper around culture, around beliefs and everything. And some of you might be doing direct services with these issues, right? So let's all work together on this. Courageous culture through compassionation. So I'm going to open it up. I know anyone has some final questions, thoughts? Thank you, Cynthia, for the,
Sure.
And then we'll jump into the after party. Anyone who wants to be part of that as well. Very, very cool. Well, we are 10 minutes over time here, but I wanted to look. Someone mentioned about the Red Cross having training videos. And you guys are seeing the chats, right? Everyone got a thumbs up. You can see the chats that are there. Cool. All right. So, all right, you guys.
Thank you so much, Chiron.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for joining us in this courageous conversation. And we'll see you on Saturday here at the Foothills Mall, and it should be fun. And I appreciate everything that you all do.